a highly profitable real estate machine with explosive, exponential growth that works harder for you than you work for it, while living a life by design. Breakthroughs are all around you, but you don't see them until now. Join Jason Williford here at the Ultimate Real Estate Machine as he converses with highly respected and world-renowned experts from inside and outside the real estate industry. You'll discover proven business, marketing, and sales strategies that transform you into the most trusted, dominant, and influential expert in your market, the preeminent agent. Each episode brings you one step closer to the highly profitable and fulfilling real estate business that you've been longing for. Here's your host, Jason Williford.
I'll go ahead and let Nate tell us about yourself and your business that you have there, Nate.
Okay, you bet, man. That's always like where to start, right? But I'll start early on. I remember, I don't know if you guys remember, like being in school, you get called out of class and they tell you to go to the auditorium, and it's like, yes, there's a speaker in town, right? And so you get to go and you're out of class and you get to see these people that they go around the country and they speak and they talk to people and they inspire and they motivate and share their stories. And I always just thought that was the coolest thing. I still remember those people to this day. And I think there's a small part of that kind of implanted in me of, man, what would it be like to be able to go and do something like that? And so, I've always been gravitated towards leadership positions, was a teacher. I have a teaching degree, was a coach in high school and college athletics, became an officer in the Army, was a serial entrepreneur for many years, CrossFit gym, insurance brokerage, investment properties across the country. And some of that I still do. And ultimately, that really led me to what I do today as a coach. I work with entrepreneurs and business owners. I speak. I'm a professional speaker. And I run some cool, crazy experiences on leadership. And
indeed, he does.
And Jason's familiar with a little bit.
Yes, and that's one thing I wanted to dig into a little bit is where I first met Nate was at an immersion experience in Orange County, California. How many days was that event, Nate? I can't remember.
It was 3 or 4. 4 days.
4 days. Yeah. You kind of lose track of time, but the breakthroughs that I had mentally, even though it's a very physical event, and for lack of better analogies, I like to call it like it's like a simulated Navy SEAL boot camp in a way. So it's a very physical event, but the mental breakthroughs that it trains your brain to have those breakthroughs is very amazing because I still have them now. The breakthroughs, the mental models that, like when I'm under the gun and I'm under stress, where I used to, have faster knee-jerk reactions, and it may, even when I am in a rush, hey, slow. What is that saying? That military saying? Slow
smooth,
is fast.
Smooth is fast.
What is it?
Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Just collecting yourself, and details matter is one of the things that ring to mind of that event. Another one, a mental model I have, is all in, and without stealing the thunder of one of your events, because I really do hope that everyone on this call would attend your event, because it's life-changing, not just to your business, but to you personally. And we talk about the wheel of life and all of the 8 spokes to the wheel of life. That's honestly what Nate's events help out with. And just for clarity, no, I didn't have this Zoom call to have a sales pitch on Nate's events.
Yeah, right.
But I do. It was profound to me. I was there for 4 days. Can you tell them a bit about what All In is about and how we had to learn about All In? If you're all in or you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, many people think they're all in life, right? And it's very clear very quickly, especially that's part of the reason we do all these physical evolutions at the beach, or because when you're tired physically and when you're stressed physically, we're going to see who you truly are, right? We're going to see who you truly show up as when you're home and things are hard and stress and pressure is high, because we all have stress and pressure in our life. And so there's a lot of times where we think we're all in, but we're really, truly not. And sometimes it takes someone like myself to actually point that out to people. And it's a hard pill for many to swallow. But when they realize that, we're really just there to help you, to help you see some things that you're not seeing yourself, and your eyes can get open to that. And if you're open to that possibility and that new perspective, then it's a big shift and big momentum, similar to what I kind of think I'm hearing you say, Jason, that like your eyes were open to that. Man, I thought I was all in, but I really wasn't. So there's a good story that I could tell real quick that I think, when you talk about commitment, to me, that's like either you're all in or you're not. You're either committed or you're not. And there's a saying that goes, be so committed that you would move a mountain with a shovel if that was what's required, right? And that's always sounded like an incredibly cool story and saying. But is anyone really going to move a mountain with a shovel? And there is actually a story of a man in India back in the 60s that they lived in this remote village, and there was this small mountain in between them and like a hospital and kind of like civilization, right? Direct line, if he was able to go through the mountain, it was about 1 kilometer. Just under a mile, right? But the road to get there was actually 70 kilometers around this mountain. And his wife needed care and wasn't able to get there as fast as they would like. And he was like, I'm never going to let that happen again. And so he would work in the fields. He sold his 3 family goats. This is a true story. And so that he could buy a hammer, a pick, and an axe. And he literally would work in the fields all day to provide for his family. He'd come home in the evenings, and he started to, like, literally with a shovel and a hammer and a pick, built a road. It took him 22 years to build this road through. The walls were 25 to 30 feet high. But he was committed. He was all in. Like, that's what all in is. And he built this road so that not only his wife could get that care, but if anyone else ever needed, this emergency care, they would be able to go and get it in the time that they needed. So that's what we talk about when we talk about all in.
And I think it ties in because another mental model that I even thought of while I was at your event was David Goggins says that when you think you're at 100% capacity, you're not. You're really at 40%. And that was just a big mindset shift for me, even while I was doing your event, that, hey, you aren't at 100%. You're at 40%, just being that there's a lot more left within you that you have to give.
Yeah, we tend to, as human beings, put some limits or some governors on ourselves, right? And 75, 80, even maybe 90% of the time, compared to everyone else around you, right? If you're a high producing person compared to everyone around you, it looks, and the perception is that you are giving everything that you have, but you really aren't, just because like you're that much further ahead of the game than everyone else. But yeah, the Navy SEALs, David Goggins, it's so true. You can do, when you think you've given everything you have, you're really truly at 40%. We can always give a little bit more. We can always dig a little bit deeper. It's like the analogy of if your son or your daughter is drowning in the lake, but you're exhausted, like you feel like you just don't have anything in you to go any further, you're going to find something to go and to save your child from drowning in the water, right? Like, you're just going to go do it. And that's kind of that mentality or that concept.
I've told very few people this, and this won't take this out of, I don't want this on the show, but I did want to bring it up for you guys. When I was in Puerto Rico, I saved a little boy from drowning. And it's a friend of mine that I won't name a name, but the boy was out in the ocean. He was out farther than he thought. There was undertow there, and the undertow was there. He was used to swimming in lakes and stuff. He's a young boy and was out there by himself. But I was out there, and well, I'm not going to, I had to go pee is what I had to do. But anyway, but There's a reason I had to. I had to be there for a minute. And at that point in mind, that point of time, I thought to myself, this could be it. Because if I have to, I am going to sacrifice myself if I can save that little boy. I threw the drink I had. There's a beach party there that day, and just threw the drink. And I said to myself, hey, this could be it, because I'm going to sacrifice myself for him. And that's one thing that I want to applaud, even going back to what your immersion done to me. I don't know if I would have had that mental model if I wouldn't have went through your event.
Oh, yeah, that's a crazy story. But yeah, that's, we will dig deep. We'll do whatever it takes in those moments to go and do what's required.
Yeah. What would you say, and we'll start out on the self-leadership piece, because we're all leaders and we all have to be leaders, whether it's your goal to say an independent agent and you don't want to have a team, you still have to lead yourself. You still have to lead your family, your kids, your husband, your wife, your spirit, your own spirituality, your own self. And even if your goal is to be an independent agent and not have a team under you, you still have a team, because there's only so much that you can do. Even if you're outsourcing, executive admins and marketing specialists and, this and that, you always will have a team, or you're going to be stuck right where you're at. So what I wanted to get into is, what are some qualities of self-leadership that we can learn to be more leaders within our own minds? That way we can lead by example with others.
Yeah. First off, whether you have a team or you don't have a team, hopefully we all recognize that we are all leaders, right? We're all leaders in some capacity in our life. If from the solo entrepreneur all the way up to the person with the big team, right? The solo entrepreneur, you're leading your clients on a daily basis, right? The way that you lead yourself in your community is going to be something that people are watching and taking notes of, and is going to be a deciding factor on how fast you can and how successfully you will grow your business, just talking from the business side of things. But it absolutely 100% does start with us. I think it's also important to because you wouldn't be here inside of this call, inside of the show, if you didn't want to become better, if you didn't want to improve, if you didn't want to scale your business and create the lifestyle that you have in your mind that you want to create for yourself, have the success that you want to have for yourself, have the impact that you want to have. And we do need to start with ourselves and, in order to go and to carry that over into how we lead others. Right. But the other piece to that is just to recognize that, because sometimes the voices are strong inside of our head, asking ourselves who the heck we think we are, or man, I can't do this, or you get overwhelmed and you got pressure and stress from all other areas, whether it's your kids, a spouse, or what else is going on, or some catastrophe happens, or something happens to someone that's close to you, right? Those are all things that happen in life, and as I call it, championship leaders are the ones that are able to respond to that powerfully and not get thrown off by that, because they know that that's just a part of the journey. So the more that we can lead ourselves consistently every single day, the more we will be prepared and ready to handle those situations, and to be able to continue to also produce in whatever arena that we're in moving forward. So a big thing for me, I think, is consistency when it comes down to yourself. We all know what we should be doing, whether it's in our fitness, our family, our finances, or our faith, right? Those are kind of the big four quadrants that I look at and live by. And everyone knows that we should take care of our body and we should work out. Everyone knows what we should and probably shouldn't be putting inside of our body. Everyone, knows that it all comes down to people and relationships. And so how are you showing up? If you're not showing up powerfully for yourself on a consistent basis, whether that's meditation, whether that's daily study, whether that's your sleep, all of that affects how you show up and who you show up as when you're in interactions with people, whether it's under your own roof or whether it's out in the community inside of your business. And so I think a big piece of that comes down to consistency. Like, start from where you're at. Number one, don't beat yourself up for where you're at, because you're here, right? Wherever you are right here, right now is where you are based on whatever decisions you made leading up to that point. Doesn't mean that that's who you need to continue to be. And if there's some areas of improvement, we just got to take little steps every single day and be consistent over a long period of time. And if we do that over a long period of time, eventually we'll look back and be like, wow, I've came a long way. I'm not the same person I am today that I was 6 months ago, and through consistent daily action. So, I mean, really that simple. There is no magic pill. And sometimes we're looking for a much more incredible answer than that, right? But it really does come down to the basics. It comes down to, I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, and the special teams has not been a very good part of their team this year. And the special teams coach was just talking about how the guys on the special teams need to get really good at the boring, right? They got to get a lot better at the boring. And that's really what I'm talking about is, being a master of the mundane, just doing the daily things that are going to improve yourself. Because when you show up that way, people are taking notice. Like, our kids are watching us way more than what we do than what we say, right? So they're watching us and taking notes on what we're doing every single day and whether that lines up with what we say. So, and that's just all really, if you really want to boil it down to one simple thing, would be consistency every single day.
Your last event was in Cancun or Mexico, or where was it? Somewhere out of the
I was in Cancun for an event. I was speaking at that event. I just did an event in Nashville. That was my event in December.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good for you. What was that about? Is it always the same topic?
For the most part, yeah. That was 12 business owners, entrepreneurs that came through, and it's a lot of leadership, a lot of getting clear on what they're doing, teamwork, things like that. We do some of the physical stuff. We do a little bit of a fire walk, kind of help them bust through some personal, limits that they placed on themselves. Make it a cool experience. So yeah, it's 4 days as well, and pretty awesome event. Great group.
Oh.
How often are you going out, Nate?
What's that?
How often are you going out?
To Nashville?
Well, just to your events. Are they all in Nashville? Or
So that one is typically in Nashville. I've done it in a few other places, but that's about every 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 times a year. And then I have a 24-hour event. We got one coming up in New York in April.
New York in April. That'll be fun.
Yeah. That one's a little bit more intense just because it's 24 hours straight through. So it's a long day.
So I have a question for you. You mentioned like action plans. Do you suggest that people do those like daily, weekly, monthly, yearly? Like what do you do when you're rolling out those different scenarios and trying to get things in place?
Yeah, I usually have people, I kind of Stephen Covey, right? Start with the end in mind. What's the big vision? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Dream big, really. Like, think about what you want your life to be, whether that's 10 years, 5 years from now. I usually start around 5 years and just have them start to really dump. Like, if anything was possible, because it really is, right? Like, if anything was possible and you could create it in the next 5 years, what would that be? What would that look like? And then we kind of come back to about 12 months. What do you want to create in the next year? And then from there, we'll create a 90-day roadmap and with 30-day benchmarks, because you always want to have something to measure against to make sure that you're on track. Mm-hmm. And then from there, every day I'm doing a daily plan, and every week I'm reflecting on my week. I'm assessing how the week went, because you always got to make tweaks and adjustments, right? And sometimes you're going to hit the outcomes and the goals faster than 90 days. Maybe that means the goal wasn't big enough, or maybe it means you just kicked ass. And that's awesome no matter what. And then you just kind of reset every 90 days. And, it's important to take some time to reflect, though, too. I think especially all you guys in this room, including myself, you're out, you're pushing, you're moving fast, you're accomplishing a lot of great things. And sometimes if we don't take time to really celebrate that and appreciate the growth and the progress you've made, you take it for granted. Or sometimes what can happen is it doesn't feel like you're really accomplishing anything because you're not taking time to acknowledge it, right? So that's important too. Every 90 days, I really kind of force the clients that I work with to take a little time to step back
Celebrate.
and reflect.
To reset. Yeah.
Which I'm horrible about that.
Yeah, we are.
But we all should be doing that.
Yeah.
I agree. Hey, what would you say are great qualities of a great leader? Going into them leading a team, what are great qualities for them to have and to keep on refining and getting better at to become a great leader within their organization?
Man, I write about this every day. But, I have a podcast called Championship Leadership. I've had some really awesome, incredible guests on. I've done over 300 episodes. And one of the first questions I always ask everyone is, championship leadership is the name of the podcast. And I ask them how they define championship leadership. And I've heard a million different answers, right? Like every time it's different. But to me, there's all kinds of characteristics and traits that make great leaders. Number one, I guess I would say, because we're all different, we all have our own personalities, is championship leadership isn't trying to lead like somebody else, right? Like, I'm a sports guy again, so if I could pick like John Wooden or someone that's really has a lot of great.
And I'm a huge Georgia Bulldogs fan. My Bulldogs won the national championship. But we talked about the podcast episode Nate and I recorded the other day. We spoke about Nick Saban. Like him or not, an extraordinary leader that has done amazing things that nobody's ever won as many national championships as he has. And, modeling, I think it comes down to modeling. And what does Nick Saban do that even the great don't do? What does the excellent, what does greatness do that just great doesn't do? What would you say?
Yeah, I would say, number one, it is good to emulate other championship leaders, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about. Like, you could take bits and pieces from others and kind of mold that into who you are as a leader. But when I really boil it down, it comes down to just a few things. A great leader has the ability to pull more out of others than they would themselves individually, right? Does that make sense? So you're going to get more out of the people inside of your team because of the leadership and how you lead and how you inspire and motivate others than they would if they were just home alone doing the work themselves, right? So that's a big one. And then the others is I'm a big guy on like ownership and responsibility. When the team's winning, when the organization is going smooth and well, a great leader will push out that recognition and that success to those around them, knowing that they're not the ones that got them there themselves, right? So they're gonna push out the praise to everyone else, almost to the point of like deflecting it totally from themselves. And not that they shouldn't, get some of the acknowledgement for the success of the team. And then, when times are tough and when things aren't going exactly right, or if your team in sports loses the Super Bowl, taking 100% accountability and responsibility for ownership of the lack of results. So those are big ones. Leadership is really, in a way, it's lonely. Meaning it's a big burden and a weight that you carry, but you do it willingly because you want to lead. And leadership is all about others and not about ourselves, right? It's all about people and not our own agendas. I don't think great leaders they can have short-term success, but I don't think they have long-term success if they're just in it for themselves.
You mentioned the lonely piece of it, that, it can be lonely being a leader. Can you unpack that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes back to, again, hey, when things are going well, I'm going to lift everyone else around me and acknowledge them for helping us to get there. And when it's not, like it's you, the light is solely on you, and you're going to own it. You're not going to deflect blame to others, and you're going to take it fully for yourself, because the buck stops with you, essentially. Right. So I think that's where it can get lonely. Now, I am a big, you might have heard some people say, as the leader, you shouldn't cross lines between personal and professional or whatever. That was definitely kind of a thing in the military. And I never totally fully agreed with that. Right. I wanted to create great relationships with my people so that they knew who I was and where I was coming from. And they also knew that I wouldn't ask them to do more than I was ever willing to do myself. And so I wanted to get to know them. I created relationships with them. I created friendships with them. But also at the same time, they needed to know that, like, if there was ever a line that needed to be drawn in the sand, and it's time for me to put my leadership hat on, that I would do that, and I would do it without hesitation. But they would also know that it wasn't personal. Like, we could still be friends, when we go home that night and joke around. But when the situation calls for it, as a leader, I'm going to step up and I'm going to hold that. So if it is
a fine line in an organization. It's a fine line when you create the friendships, because, some folks will, if you give an inch, try to take a mile. And I'm talking about deep friendships. And sometimes I've experienced that in the past, where others can think that the others are getting favoritism because they're one of Nate's buddies type thing. How do you handle, things like that, like from a cultural standpoint?
That's right. Yeah, you just have to. That's why it's such a fine line. You can't allow that to happen. You got to make it very clear that, hey, like when I was in Kuwait and I was the leader of 42 men in this platoon, there was one soldier that became a very close friend of mine, still is to this day. And, we did a lot of stuff together. But, if there was a hard conversation to be had, it was had. It wasn't hesitated on. I think if they start to see there's some hesitation, or that there maybe is a little favoritism going on, then more than likely there is, right? And so I was very careful not to allow that to happen.
Great point. I got one last question, and then I will let them ask any questions they would like to pertaining to leadership. What strategies did you learn being a platoon leader in the military that you utilize in business as a leader? Going back to commitment, consistency,
and just about everything. A lot draws back to that time and that experience, but details matters huge, right? Communication obviously is really, really huge in the military. I mean, the reason that we train and do what we do is, in the case that you are, like I was in a foreign country, and you have a mission and you need to execute on that. If you get an order as a leader, number one, the people need to be able to trust you and know that and be willing to want to follow you. And that's all done through training and how you show up every day. That goes back to that consistency, being consistent. Because, all right, is this someone that I will be willing to follow and do what he says when all the chips are on the line, the bullets are flying over your head, right? Can I trust this guy? And a lot of that happens through who I show up as every single day. The communication that I have, is it really open communication, or is it, well, he says it's open lines of communication, but every time I try and talk to him, he's not available, right?
Common mistake.
Yeah. Is he connected with his people? Discipline, right? The military gives you a kind of discipline. And that's when we talk about leading yourself. There's certain standards in the military. And so as a leader, you want to be creating those standards. You want to be the standard in your organization there's a minimum standard. And then there's the standard that we set as leaders. Because as leaders, we don't just shoot for the minimum. What happens if, we are in a real world situation and you're in real estate and a deal starts to fall apart and you're getting calls from everybody, and you're getting people coming at you from all. Are you going to wilt to that pressure? Are you going to be able to stand in the fire and be able to calmly take on whatever it is that's going on, take a step back, take a deep breath, and still be able to bring that deal back together, or whatever, whatever the situation might be. And that all comes through our consistent in how we show up in one area of our life is how we're going to show up in another. And so again, consistently, are you doing the things to take care of yourself first, so that when you need to lead others, there's a pattern there of them seeing and knowing who you are as a leader.
Love that. And I apologize. One last question. Common mistakes. What are common mistakes that you see leaders make while they're on the evolution of becoming a better leader?
Yeah, this one's come up a bit in some of the conversations I've had with some folks. And I think a big one is trying to do everything yourself, like not entrusting and empowering the team that you have, because you have this mentality that like no one can do it better than me, right? It's always a hard one to give up the reins. But we see it all the time when as I'm working with business owners and they come to my event for a week. A lot of these folks, it's the first time they've ever taken time away from their team. Well, now they're forced to allow their team to do the job that they hired them to do, right? And almost 100% of the time when they get back, they're like, oh my God, my team thrived. They did amazing. Like, I have an amazing team. I'm like, yeah, and you need to continue to allow them to do the job that you brought them in to do. And so, but I think, early on as a leader, it's natural for us to, want to be everywhere at all times and make sure and kind of micromanage people, and just know that that's not a great culture and environment where people are going to be allowed to thrive and grow.
Do you think it's time to let them in on the little secret about their final evolution for Agents on Fire?
I think so. What is it?
The final evolution before the yacht party for 3 days is going to be an immersion event with Nate Bailey, where he's going to be putting you guys through the ringer, per se, for 3 days straight. And we're going to see who can last and who can't.
That'd be fun.
I'm totally messing with you.
They're like, I'm out.
That would be fun as hell. I would love that, but no, we're not doing that. But God, we could. As much as I'd love to do that. Let's hop on to any kind of like questions. Anyone have any questions for Nate to championship leadership? How you can become a better leader within your organization?
I do.
Cool. What you got, Miss Angela?
What do you recommend? Like I'm looking to hire an assistant as a leader when you're, expanding your team. Obviously, you want hardworking people, but what questions do you ask? What do you look for? Any characteristics or anything that you can help during the interview process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I really think it comes down to obviously a lot of conversation and just questions about, I just like to get to know the person and what that requires. Because when you sit down with somebody, especially someone that you don't know, and especially somebody that is looking for an opportunity with you, right? A lot of times they're obviously putting on their best face, right?
We all do.
Yeah. And as they should. And they're going to try and tell you a lot of things that they think you want to hear, right? Most likely. The majority of people will do that. And so it really requires, I would say, just trying to really dig deep with them, like get past a lot of the surface level answers that they're going to give you. Really try to get to a feel for, who this person is, and could I see myself working with them? Would they be, if you have other people on your team, I don't know if you do or not, but if you do, then obviously that's a big piece to it too. Will they fit into this? Will they fit into the culture and where I want to go? What's their aspirations? What do they want to do? What do they want to accomplish? Is there room to allow them to grow? Because you want people who want to grow. You don't want people that are
Amen.
Like, I just want this position and that's all I really want.
I call it a ladder to ascension.
Yeah.
And you have to have a ladder of ascension within your organization that allows people to grow within the organization.
Yep. And even if And even if there isn't necessarily that next phase for them to go, maybe number one, but they're an amazing person and they can really do the job at a high level for you, then maybe it's still a great fit, right? They're going to come and they're going to serve you for the purpose you needed them for the time. And then you get to see them go years down the road or whatever and flourish and turn into the leader that they want. I mean, I think that's awesome as well. But yeah, I mean, it really comes down to what I just talked about. I would really dig deep with them and try to get them to know the real person and who they are, what they want, what drives them, what inspires them. And
how committed they are, how committed are they really, and how consistent are they also in their other areas of life, possibly?
Yep. And we can do that. You can do that through people, social media is a great one, right? What they're putting out there lining up with the person that's sitting in front of you and talking to you, right? And not everybody's putting and as they shouldn't necessarily put all their dirty laundry out on social media, but you get a good feel.
You'll be surprised at what you see. And I think Mr. Nate is suggesting that per his military terms, do some social media recon before you hire someone, because I know that's always been it became a part of our hiring process, just like any decent hiring process. You're going to do some research, and there are times you'll be amazed at what you find. Just personally, and I'm not saying for everyone's brand, but we did a lot of advertising, like on Christian radio, and this one agent in particular started doing some research, and there were like very recent photos of chugging a bottle of vodka with hardly no clothes on at the lake. That's just what we didn't want that aligning with our particular brand. We knew that by doing just some social media recon.
Yeah. One other thing would be, give them a task, give them something, give them a test. And, again, details matter. See how they handle that. I mean, most people nowadays, they have a hard time following the very simple direction. And I imagine, especially in your industry, details are extremely important. And when you're dealing with helping somebody find their dream home or whatever it might be, one of the biggest purchases they're ever going to make, and the more regulations that we get every single day it seems like we're living, right? There's a lot of
stuff.
For
an executive admin in real estate in particular, details definitely matter, because great salespeople, the greater the salespeople that I've experienced through 22 years of 100% commission sales, the greater that they get in sales, usually the less organized they are. Yeah. So as what you're basically doing is hiring to your weakness, some of your weaknesses anyway. Your weaknesses, honestly, your strengths, honestly, should not be that, hey, I am super duper the most organized person out there, because it's usually going to, your sales skills is probably lacking. If so you're wanting to hire to that. And that's exactly what an executive admin is. And, they should have high organizational skills that I agree 1,000% with Nate that the details matter. You give them that little task or a little, what's the word that I'm looking for, Nate? Not role play, long story short, an audition. Yeah. A quick little audition. Hey, here's a task for you to do. And, before you hire them 1,000% on, making sure that, you guys align. And I also personally believe in a 90-day probation period, without calling it probation period. Just that way you can see how, after the honeymoon is over, seeing how, your relationship is with each other, see if, they're, truly doing what they said they would do and what they're committed to doing while they're in the interview process. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns, anything that you would like to add on as it pertains to leadership?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Nate, I got a question for you. you talk about the common mistakes of doing everything yourself. And what happens is when you do that, you kind of become addicted to the minuscule tasks, in my mind. And I've been a victim of that. Where I've been defeated even worse is where I would hand those tasks off and I would run into two types of people. Okay. I would run into the people who like to change the rules. Okay. So you would sit down with somebody, you would show them how you want to do something. And then all of a sudden, a week or a month or 6 months later, they're doing it totally different. And they didn't ask or tell you. And I've always told people that when employees change the rules, it's just cancerous to the company. Okay. I've also run into the other side of the fence where you train people to do something and all of a sudden they just can't seem to remember how you train them. And you keep telling them and you keep telling them and you keep telling them. And then it gets to the point where you just got to take it back. So how do you create that layer between yourself and the employee to where you can really trust what you're passing off? Because that's where I see several times.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to some kind of a system of checks and balances, right? When you got somebody new, I mean, number one, how much training are you giving them? How clear are they on your process and system? There's a good chance that maybe they just didn't completely understand it. They're too embarrassed to say it. And so they go away and they're just doing it the best they can. I don't know. Like every situation can be really different. So ultimately it comes back to you as the leader, right? Mm. And so, what's the system in place that you're checking in on them? And if you got to continually correct them and continually watch over their shoulder because they keep making the same mistakes, then it's a process of, well, maybe I just need, this person isn't the right fit. He's not, we got to get somebody else in the book. I get it as entrepreneurs because I have a lot of friends and clients in this situation where one's a pest control company and they're just dying for people. And so what happens, they end up hanging on to the people that just aren't cutting their weight, but they're better than nothing, right? Well, I would argue that they're not better than nothing, that you'd be way better off cutting them loose because now they are a cancer to the culture because everyone else sees, well, this guy's able to do this and that's not how it's supposed to be done. So maybe I'll just do whatever I want to do, right? So now you got cancer spreading quickly throughout your entire company because you were afraid to get rid of this person because you had this scarcity mindset that you can't go out and find somebody else to do it, or that you're too busy because you don't want to take the time to train. I understand those are all real concerns, but again, championship leaders, they are decisive. And if there's not somebody there that's just simply truly isn't able to pick it up or is just blatantly not doing what you're asking them to do, then they got to go. And you got to find somebody else to fill that hole and maybe pick up the slack until you can, right? But ultimately it comes down to, like, are you continually communicating with them? Are you continually checking in on them? Or somebody else in your team, depending on how big the organization is or how many people, right? If you have mid-level leaders that can do that, now they report to you and you don't have to do all these checks. But there's some system there to do that, to correct, to consistently train and give them opportunities to grow. And then entrust, you got to empower them to go out and do it. And then again, but there's still periods of time where you're going to check in to make sure that it's getting done. So, yeah.
Yeah. What I'd like to add to that is, it came from Deming, and Deming said that if you're having the same problem over and over and it's different people, it's not a people problem, it's a process problem. It could be a process problem in your hiring process, that maybe you're hiring the wrong people. It could be a problem in your sales training system, because when you're training not just your sales team, but when you're training people in general, I think Chet Holmes calls it in the Ultimate Sales Machine, he calls it pig-headed discipline, that, people you just have to over and over and over again train the same thing like repetitively. That's why it has to be a duplicable process as well, that you have a manual of, that you also have the policies within there, that expectations without an agreement is a dream. So just because you have all these, as I currently have and have had in the past, we can have expectations in our own minds of what things should be. But if we don't have an agreement in place, that we have an agreement between those two parties, the way that things are supposed to be done, it's just a dream. But I think it really boils down to, because I have spoken to Kevin more on that, and I would agree with Nate. I think one thing, the hiring process, getting really clear on who the right fit is. But if you're having the same issue where, man, I told them that. And I told them that 2 months ago. I trained them exactly how to do that, and they're not doing it the way that I told them to do it. It's because you have to constantly circle around and constantly be retraining the same thing over and over again.
And on that note, Jason, I think that's very true. But sometimes you do get employees that maybe see other opportunities and ways to do things, and you should always be open to that as well.
Yes, ma'am. Collaboration's huge. I agree with you 1,000%.
In that particular,
but they shouldn't also be doing on they also shouldn't take it upon their own to start implementing what they haven't spoken about with the owner of the company, and them test out what they think is going to work better than what Kevin does without consulting with him prior to doing so.
Yeah, when I had new hires, I would always do like a morning huddle, like every morning the first week, and then, kind of gauge on that to see how to follow up for the first few weeks. And then I would still do a morning huddle every 3 to 4 business days to kind of.
Yeah, you're always training, always, and always should be. You should always be growing the people within your organization. Huddles, like Stephanie is saying, one-on-one meetings. There's I had an agent that me and the ex thought that, hey, they're perfect. They're doing a lot of business, and they were happy, we thought at the time. And I started having the one-on-one conversations, having one-on-ones with each one of the agents within the organization. And I found out through the very first one-on-one that, hey, I'm not happy. I actually, I've been thinking about quitting because I feel like I'm a peon. Which we did not look at her like that, but that was her internal thoughts, that if I wouldn't have had that one-on-one with her, that I wouldn't have discovered that, and I wouldn't have been able to fix it. And we did. 8 years later, still there. So, well, shoot, I appreciate your time there, Mr. Nate, and everybody else's time as well. It's valuable for me. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate you.
Thank you, Nate.
Have a great day.
Good night.
That's it for this episode of The Ultimate Real Estate Machine. May your real estate machine be extremely rewarding, fulfilling, and life-changing for you and all the people that you impact. Claim those skyrocketing results that you demand from your real estate business. Subscribe to the show for more content like this at ultimaterealestatemachine.thepodcast.com. And don't forget to leave a positive rating. Thank you for joining us. See you on the next episode.